before we start, we had a pre-chat about the questions, and the pre-chat lasted longer than this session, so hopefully we'll cover some good ground. So thanks very much for that. It was great to meet you. So we had some great presentations today. One of the things, the first question really was, Sharu said in her presentation that leaders need to have talent experience as a key skill set. And she also said, and we've all talked about this, people managers are really overburdened now. So how can we best support managers, people managers, with the talent agenda? And do you want to go first, Anna?
Yeah, happy to jump in. In our experience in a couple of the last years, with also becoming listed company, so becoming a lot, short-term oriented company, with quite a clear business model, we continue to have, competences, skills, things that, you need in a daily learning and development management. But I think the important one over the last years was really to help managers and teach them in that aspect to identify the longer term potential of employees. And this whole dimension of potential, which is also discussed in performance management, talent management, was really our main kind of, problem to crack. We've been using different things, so I don't think we are there yet, but we've been using, for instance, Gallup strengths, just to really take the mindset of leaders off the job descriptions and technical skills and start to understand, what is this person bringing to the table. And then second, from the leadership perspective, we tried to identify together with especially senior leaders, here maybe not the line leaders, what are the leadership skills that really move the needle for us. It used to be, again, a very small company. So now we had to empower more leaders down the rank, let's say, to be also leading the business impact, leading innovation. And those two aspects were the things that we were more kind of, problem solving together with the leaders. And implementing that in the systems to some extent. We don't have too many systems, so that's relatively easy.
Yeah. And Sara, did you have a similar experience?
Yeah, so we have been starting really, as also Shannon was sharing before, to integrate into people managers' priorities, also some expectations around talent management and the development of their employees. Some expectations are really around also succession planning. And then there has been a campaign also in terms of education, as you were mentioning, also creating identification of potential and really of potential for the organization. So how do I let my talent, it is not your talent, it is the talent of the organization. So how do we change also the mindset around that? And last year we have introduced the JDI model to bring an additional level of objectivity and probably fairness and neutrality around the perception also that there could be in different places around also how to assess potential. So that has been helping us also speaking one language when we discuss what we look at when we want to define if someone has more potential in terms of acceleration or potential to grow within the organization at different pace and also within a different breadth of functions.
Martin, it's your view on this.
Well, not a view. I was just thinking about it. So the situation where we are in now with the bank is that for us, talent, of course, is really important, and there is a fear and a concern, of course, that most of our talents leave because of the insecurity, and talents will leave you first because they have the network, so they will be gone before you know it. And so what we see now happening is that critical roles, for example, is really, really important. And that's connected now also to talents to really make sure that we keep the right people, and that we are also monitoring that in a very, very good way. So I don't think I can talk about the things that we would like to do with the talent management or the talent profiles. I can only tell you about what we're trying to do now, what we have, and how we are trying to utilize that. So critical roles combined to talent is now for us the most important thing, and to keep watch of that.
So Eleanor earlier on in her presentation was talking about the disruptions that have happened over the last few years in terms of, COVID and wars and other things that are going on. So, what ways can, an agile approach or a modern approach to talent management help organizations better prepare for disruption? We've got things we talked on the call about AI, for example. So
what we, first of all, I think it's important to always have clarity on business needs and then the skills that will be needed already. So to have a view and a bit of a forecasting on the trends in the industry, so that basically it's doing very solid workforce planning and doing it in a dynamic way, and not doing it in isolation as an HR function, but it should really be done in full, not only in partnership, but probably with an ownership also from the business leaders in terms of some of the decisions that then they will be driving with the workflow, with the workforce. So first of all, really always keeping this clarity on workforce planning, so that then you can map your talent acquisition strategy accordingly, but also then the internal talent development strategy accordingly and the specific skills that you need to build. We had a case recently with our e-commerce teams. We want to move from what we have today, that is about 10% of our sales that are happening through e-commerce. We want to get by 2028 to 30%. We do not have the skills internally. We have very few people who have e-commerce skills. So we are acquiring externally, but we cannot only get people from external because we also need to make sure that we leverage internal talents and give them the opportunity to redeploy some of their skills in that area and to learn about that. So in there, we have a real plan on acquisition from external, but then also building internally by leveraging the newcomers and what they bring with best-in-class expertise from other companies, leveraging the potential of some of our talents and their ability and their agility to learn. And so it's really mix in between the two. And then in some other cases, it's also how do you anticipate some of the shifts in terms of skills and some needs of really repurposing employees. And it was mentioned also before, and a solid workforce planning will also potentially limit the need of recurrent social plans, like it has been our case in some of the European countries in the past years. And we're really trying to limit that by anticipating.
I'm happy to go next. Maybe adding to it, because workforce planning is something that I wish we had fantastic, but we are only starting. The company has been growing so fast that we've been mostly acquiring talent from outside, and we didn't even have time for reflection of where in the future will the talent go. So we started this reflection 2 years ago with kind of post-COVID slowdown. But I think the critical thing, because as HR, even as leaders, we can create this agile opportunities, kind of opening to it, but it's really also about the mindset of employees, and especially those mid-level, senior experts, people who want to become leaders and grow in the company. And they can also go somewhere in the market, of course, because e-commerce is growing. Sorry, don't, Allegro is great. So it was, for us, it's also working with the employee. And it happens, of course, in the kind of performance talent cycle, but it also happens right now through an ongoing work with HR business partners, with almost like internal career advisory. We don't have a special team for it, but we are more kind of creating advisors on the learning side in the HR business partnership as skill to open people's mindset that, if you've been forever in, commerce, maybe you want to go somewhere else. If you've been forever in logistics, maybe you want to grow somewhere else. Even within technology domain, you would not have think that, people don't want to move, not even coding languages. This is one. But for instance, we know that by now software engineer is like a factory worker, and this is where AI will step in. So where we are growing our edge is the data and machine learning, and actually the people who will talk to the chatbots, talk to the chat GPT. And we want to encourage the software engineers that are almost nice donuts in the butter, well paid, sought by the market, to think, 5 years ahead. And so really the disruption is not so much surprising for us as a technology company, but it's really how do we prepare the people? How do we prepare the internal supply side for this agility?
Yeah, I like what you're saying there, because I think if you take a look at all the talents that are coming now into the workforce, right? It's a combination of top down and bottom up, the way that I see it. So top down, definitely you need to have your workforce management in the right way. You need to have your skills management up to par, all those things. But the people that are now coming into the workforce or have been in the workforce for, let's say, 3 to 4 years, they don't expect vertical and horizontal career paths anymore. They expect to move much quicker. You know, Reid Hoffman has called it tour of duties. He says, okay, so your talent says, I have something to offer to you. It's like in the marketplace, basically. And then for 2 years, I would like to have this context to basically gain new skills or sharpen ones that I already have. For that, you get either financial revenue, or you get non-financial benefits. And I think that is something that we also need to start thinking about, to make sure that we start building basically career paths that are moving like a lily path, basically. So on one hand, you need to make sure that your employees are aware of that. And the new workforce actually expects that. They're saying, okay, what, you need me to do 10 years to actually get there? No, because my skills within the next 5 years will be outdated. I need to continually develop myself. Your example of the AI is a really great one, right? So software engineers, exactly. How do you now make sure that the skills they have are going to be what the market wants? So in demand. So I think it's a really important one to also keep in mind, that vertical and horizontal career paths. I really think with the workforce that's coming up now and is already there, are really, really end of life cycle.
And if I may, there is something that I've seen working and that could answer a bit both needs, a bit the top down, and also the fact that, like in our organization, we have a lot of employees with long tenure, and they may be a bit more resistant to change and to start to, even though it is about maintaining their own employability, but still the first tendency would be a bit of resistance. And at the same time, how to motivate and keep engaged more junior talents that are joining the organization. And something that we have seen working, it's really the gigs. Because from one side, for the more junior talents, you keep them engaged by exposing them at different areas of the organization with different and exciting projects that they can actually own as well. And at the same time, with the employees who have more seniority within the organization and long tenure, it can be a softer way to be exposed also in that case to different level of skill set that they could start to acquire. So that I've seen working quite well, and that could kind of answer the need that we were highlighting.
Well, just kind of to add to that point, or just to extend on that, is, you know, we are moving to this sort of tour of duty type way of working, and with that we've got to encourage mobility within teams to keep the talent. But managers, and it's human nature, will always trying to hang on to the best people. Do you have any advice for the group here on how to enable managers to kind of let go and think about what this will mean for the overall organization and for the talent?
Yeah, I think one thing I like very much is a very simple performance system with KPIs that are like the whole company KPIs. Again, I mean, it might not work for your more complex organizations, but we have really the final business impact as the main KPI. So everyone is really thinking about the end state. And the second one is yes, we have organigram for clarity, for, you know, some responsibility. But we really do have, sometimes you don't see your people because they are actually working with 3 other leaders all the time. Because the projects and the products are kind of, you know, going across the organization. And we encourage this because that, first of all, creates exposure for talent, but it helps you to understand that you don't own the talent. You can be more of, you know, sponsor, mentor, leader, and this is your duty. But it's okay, the person will go somewhere else. And it's not your glory, it's the glory of the company. So in a way, the recognition framework and the sort of the hard KPIs and the bonuses, etc., are structured in a way that at least don't prevent this mobility. And then the second one is, I think this is the stage or the wave we are starting right now, is again in the potential discussions, because it used to be more discussions like several years ago, like time to promotion, time to career level change. Now the potential discussions are, going in different dimensions, but also addressing very clearly and nudging the employees to talk about other options also outside your current area. And I think it's just the framework of conversation changes, and the leader has this time to think about it, like with the Disneyland, surprises, that the talent might go away and contribute somewhere else.
I totally agree on the recognition part. We should start to recognize really and differentiate the leaders who are playing the role in terms also of being talent developers and that are intentionally doing that. So that first of all, I think it's the first one, and it seems an easy one. But then in reality, when you get to the year end and there are all the business results, often that takes more space than sometimes we wish it does when in terms then of KPIs related really to people. And then the other point I would say it's really about also continuing with the education and the cultural transformation around that piece on talent management seen as a company, really company talent. And the acceleration nowadays, as we were saying, may not mean the vertical growth. It could mean also exploring some of the other functions and really gaining those additional skills and understanding of how other functions are also what are doing and how they are evolving, because it will pay back often in the medium to long term, also especially for some of the junior talents. The more diversified the T profile that also you were mentioning, it's really going to be the critical one for the future.
So yeah, fully agree with everything you guys said. But the last thing I would say is also you need oversight as a company to also nudge some of these managers, because as you said, human behavior is a bit like, and as people manager, you should be developing them constantly, right? So you actually, when your talent leaves, that should be your end game. So I think there's an oversight piece there where you make sure that people analytics, for example, has that kind of oversight. That managers do an inventory of all the skills, because often they don't know all the skills that their people have, and that you then bring that also top down, so you can have again discrimination. And then the other thing is you need to also empower the employees. So you need to make sure that it's not only the line manager that starts that conversation. You need to make sure that the assets that you give to the employee and say, hey, you have skills and we want to develop those skills. That's why you're here. I think that's a really important one to take into account and make sure that happens.
Maybe one last point that I already started experiencing, especially for movements among mid to senior leaders, is also the psychological safety. Because sometimes when we did the talent reviews and kind of this marketplace approach, supply demand, I think we ended up as top leaders with a very clear idea, like we know this is, the right person and the great person for this move, somewhere, horizontal. And the person, so I did a lot of those coaching conversations, and the person said, no in the end. And actually what we worked on very closely with all the stakeholders later, including sometimes the CEO, is like, we cannot punish the person also for not taking this opportunity. So we have to, I think, really walk the talk on this being agile and kind of, both sides of the equation participating in it. Because in the past, especially in high performance cultures, and we are one, I've seen, in a way like, oh, you did not take the opportunity, well, you want to just stay in your current job. Okay, next review, oh, this person didn't want to move, yeah?
You talking about the psychological safety piece, one thing that we did as well was looking at our overall talent acquisition process also with the lenses of inclusion, because what we noticed as well is we were having biases, or there were opportunities or risk for biases at the different steps of the talent acquisition process, even just starting from the beginning of a candidate experience, whether they were external or internal candidate. And that really brought it some adjustment, starting from the job posting. We changed the way we define our job posting. We describe the roles and the type of skills and the number and the amount of skills that we ask for, and the type of specific questions that we ask. And we discussed about that last week. We have in some countries, we have started to have to remove names and education from some of the CV for clearly to really limit some type of biases that may occur.
That's great. So, fantastic panel. Does anyone have any questions that they'd like to ask? It's such a fascinating topic. Any thoughts? Someone say coffee. Yeah, okay. Okay, well, we might leave it at that. So thanks very much, guys, for that.